On June 13th, 2025, the 11th main entry in the Five Nights at Freddy's series, Secret of the Mimic, released. You play as Arnold, a Fazbear Entertainment technician tasked to enter Edwin Murray's warehouse to retrieve the Fazbear property after Edwin went missing. Said property is a prototype endoskeleton designed to change sizes and fit into any costume, as well as mimic the character's personality. Originally made to keep Edwin's son, David Sean Murray, entertained while he worked, it later learned of violence from an incident that the details of which Dispatch describes as fuzzy. It is your job to retrieve the blueprints, and potentially even the endoskeleton itself, from the factory. However, as you progress through the factory, you find out that you aren't the first technician they sent in, as you find various bodies stuffed into mascot costumes, dressed in the same uniform as you, reading Recovery Team 012, and you can even find their truck in the parking lot. Now, I don't plan on explaining the entire story or gameplay of the game here. Instead, I'd like to talk about the contradictory information in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, specifically to the story, The Mimic, and what it means for the series of books as a whole and how it's connected to the games. The big changes are Fiona's death, the history of the factory, the size of the factory, purpose of the factory when David dies, and mimicking Fiona. Starting with the factory changes, I think a majority of the changes to the size and purpose are to make an interesting game. What fun would Secret of the Mimic be if you just ran around an empty warehouse that held a levers machine and a bunch of lace? Not much. There wouldn't be much of a game there to begin with. The history of the factory changing is to make the story a little more interesting as well, and it gives you a reason to hear the tapes you do. Fiona's death changing to her dying to the Fall Fest fire is a strange change to the story, but I do think it can be explained as tying Fall Fest closer to the story of the game. I'm not really sure why this change even exists to begin with, but it's an interesting one and makes Fiona's death a little more meaningful to the overall story of Five Nights at Freddy's. In the story, The Mimic, we know that David dies in early to mid-March. However, in the games, we know that he dies in early December, specifically on the 6th. Another extremely weird change, and I honestly don't know why this one happened at all. M1 mimicking Fiona is also strange, considering that Fiona presumably died before M1 existed, but I suppose he could have heard the birthday reels and audio logs scattered around the costume manor. However, despite all of this, the major story beats are still present. Fiona dies, Edwin takes on projects for Fazbear Entertainment, Edwin makes the Mimic, David is hit by a car, Mimic is violently destroyed by Edwin, Fazbear Entertainment sends technicians to retrieve their property, and a majority of those technicians are killed by Mimic while using costumes such as a pink mushroom man, a pink and green court jester, and a lion. With all of that said, my thoughts on how the games connect to the Tales from the Pizzaplex novellas. I think TalesGames is still mostly true, but any information given to us in the games overwrites the information given in the book. And interestingly, Tales from the Pizzaplex epilogues seemingly follow the events of Secret of the Mimic more cleanly rather than the Mimic story. The Mimic Model 1 and 2 manual matches perfectly with M1 and M2 from the game, and even Edwin's writing during the elevator weight repair segment is explicitly described as chicken scratches, which is the exact wording used to describe the notebook Lucia finds in the old Freddy Fazbear's pizza place under the Pizzaplex. That's all I really have to say for this video. Goodbye.